this all culminates into where we're getting into some of that deeper level of brain and nervous system
Yes.
detoxification. And so phase 3 actually does have a part of it that's detoxification. But it's where the encapsulations of toxins have been held deep inside the body.
Right.
And that's where a lot of us are missing that, because I didn't understand why. Wait a minute, I've done all this cleansing and
Right.
such. Why am I still showing high levels markers on, heavy metal tests
Right.
and things? Welcome to the Resiliency Method, the truth about healing. I'm Dr. Erica, and we are here to uncover the root causes keeping you stuck. Together, we'll restore your energy, your focus, and your resiliency so you can finally heal, regenerate, and feel truly alive again. This episode is a special one. I was interviewed on the Longevity Leaders podcast, where we dive deep into key conversations around health and longevity. I'm excited to share it with you here. In this episode, I share a story of being so sensitive to gluten that an accidental restaurant slip up left me choking and scrambling for emergency treatment. Today, my body can handle environmental exposures without breaking down. I'm Dr. Erica, and in this episode of the Resiliency Method, the Truth About Healing podcast, Dr. Ashley Beckham and I are revealing why true healing isn't about more restriction. It's about building and increasing adaptability. We're exposing the material left behind by parasites that keep you food sensitive forever, why your C-section scar is disrupting your body's electrical system, and the detox phase that actually reverses reactivity. So if you're tired of being fragile, this episode is for you. Let's dive in.
Welcome to the Longevity Leaders podcast. I am Dr. Ashley Beckman, and I'm here with Dr. Erica. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thank you, Ashley.
So tell us a little bit about your signature process.
The resiliency method.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. So the resiliency method is something that I came up with out of my own personal experience and my own personal health journey. I had been on for probably over 10 years. Started when I got to grad school. You can appreciate
Yes.
the training for,
Yep.
and we're both trained in Chinese medicine,
Mhm.
acupuncture. It started there when I left a corporate career, went back to school. Chinese medicine, acupuncture saw 4 long years ahead of me, and my health went into the tank.
Yeah.
And I knew that I needed to do something. I had been feeling the inclinations that as I was getting into my mid-30s and
Yep.
it was time to take my health a little more seriously
Yes.
than I had. And I knew that I wasn't going to make it through that rest of the program if I didn't do something. So it tanked the first year. I heard of a practitioner who was doing some nutritional testing, clinical quantum applied kinesiology based testing, which otherwise sometimes is known as muscle testing.
Right.
She was using a particular method of it. It was really getting to a root cause level for a lot of people and in a very specific way. So it started with that and experiencing that. It was like a miracle, quite frankly.
Yeah.
I went from thinking I wasn't going to make it through the rest of that program to being inspired to learn everything that I could about nutrition. So I was fortunate enough to be in a town in Austin, Texas, where there was also a training center for a whole food based supplement company called Standard Process.
Yes.
And that's where I went and learned everything I could. I washed dishes while they piped in the education. So I went from not thinking I was going to make it through to being so inspired that I had to learn everything about functional medicine, functional nutrition. And that's where it started. So by the time I was, I think, a year into that learning process, I learned the method that my practitioner was using on me. And I started a practice while I was still in grad school doing nutrition.
Oh, wow.
Nutritional testing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was a good start. Saw great results with that for a long time. But having been injured as a child, I had stepped on a rusty nail in my backyard. I got a tetanus shot.
Oh, yeah.
And within, a year, I had shingles on my face. They were taking pictures of me for medical books because I was 10 years old.
Oh.
And then within a year of that, I had my first grand mal seizure.
Yep.
And it was kind of like set off the pattern, which I was genetically predispositioned to, but still, allowed my body at that level of exposure and of
Mhm.
toxicity kind of was the straw that broke the camel's back and
Yep.
then set off this what I call is really an autoimmune process of the brain and the nervous system.
Mhm.
And the more that I did work on my health over time, I started to see some of the things like diet and exercise and doing some of those things that were like parasite cleansing and even heavy metal detox were all helpful for a bit of time. But I also started to see that I needed to go a little bit further. And
Right.
that really set off really what became the resiliency method.
Yeah, it's amazing. So actually one of my friends had a similar story and he created a documentary called Trace Amounts.
Yes,
So
I saw
Eric is
that.
a good friend of mine.
Mhm.
Yep, and he had a similar experience as a 30-year-old male, right,
Mhm.
with the tetanus shot.
Mhm.
So again, the heavy metals can be a big piece,
Mhm.
right? And I think too, so it sounds like you look at genetics as well?
So we do well, actually, it's interesting because we do a clinical application of, an assessment, right? So what we can do is we can identify where a toxin might be stored in an organ, tissue, or gland.
Mhm.
So we'll do the blood tests. We'll do some of those, great functional
Functional
medicine lab
tests. Yep.
tests that we can run out there. And certainly those things give our patients a big and broad perspective on what's really going on for them. And it's a
Right.
great place to start. What we do, though, is a little bit different in that we will use supplementation. Once we see that, we'll get the lay of the land, but we'll use supplementation for what we call facilitating a healing response in the body.
Okay.
So, what we're doing is we're going after, with the really starting with the premise that the body's perfect in design
Right.
and it knows how to heal
Mhm.
itself.
Yes.
It's just that when you are talking about multiple generations
Mhm.
of toxin exposure,
Right.
and then where you've had now this period of time with multiple generations of those people coming together and breeding
Mhm.
and then having children.
Right.
And then it's kind of this multiplying compounding effect.
Yes.
And here we are today with some of the highest autoimmune rates
Mhm.
and increasing neurological
Yep.
diseases, neurocognitive decline
Mhm.
diseases and disorders as we get older. And those disorders, you cannot wait until you're 70 to 80
No.
to start working on. You got to get your brain healthy today
Right.
to offset that. So if that's in your genetic picture. So yes, we look at genetics, but we see it more in terms of we take into account what is it that is in your family, but also when we're going through our process, we'll start to see how they're testing
Mhm.
what's there. So I'll actually say to a
Right.
patient, you have this in your family.
Mhm.
Who has this in your family? Because I can see where the toxin is being stored
Right.
or the stealth pathogen is hanging out.
Yep.
And I know that's their weakest link.
Yes.
And that's where all of these things show up, right? So there is a genetic component, and that's inside of that. And I'm usually they're like, "How did you know?" And it's like, because, you've got this showing up there, and that's something that we need to go work on next. So for us, it'll start with them coming in because of their symptoms. And then what ends up being is, let's look at the things that you're going to age into
Right.
as well. Yeah.
So something you mentioned that we both share in common is the Chinese medicine.
Hmm.
Right. So one thing that's also, I think, very fascinating and what I love about it is how we see constitutions,
Yes.
right? And or looking at an organ and looking at the emotions associated.
Hmm.
So that helps us a bit uncover possibly some stored trauma or stored emotions
Yes.
when we're seeing, for example, they keep, let's just say even with Lyme, for example, and it keeps attacking the joints.
Hmm.
Then we look to the liver,
Hmm.
right? And so it's one thing I think that's probably drew both of us to the Chinese medicine theory is how we can apply it today.
Absolutely.
Because these stealth pathogens,
Hmm.
they attack or love to hide or live
Hmm.
in certain organs. And it's always interesting of what it chooses,
Hmm.
right? We have people that always have gut issues
Yep.
or always have headaches or always get joint
Yep.
issues or brain fog.
Hmm.
But it's through our TCM lens that I think gives us extra insight.
Absolutely. Yeah. And those things usually do add up to the genetics. I think we're still learning. I think it'll be interesting to take genetics and actually put into the context you're talking about
Hmm.
in terms of patterns of illness. And that's really where we come from too. And we look at
Right.
our patient is we're not just seeing an organ or a part
Right.
of the body. our training is and how everything is connected to everything else. And I don't know about you, but it always drives me crazy when you hear people talk about Chinese medicine and it's like almost in this way, and we were kind of taught this too, like almost in this way that like, it's you got to take on a whole new paradigm or way of looking at the body in order to like even conceive of it. Like it's this like strange, esoteric, separate thing.
Mm,
And I always boil it down for people. I'm like, it's really just the study of how everything is connected to everything else.
true.
Right?
Yep.
Like the Chinese were meticulous about opening up and dissecting human bodies
Yeah.
and mapping where every blood vessel,
Yep.
vein, artery, like, and that is what becomes the channels, the fascia
Hmm.
planes, the channels, the meridians.
Right.
It's that little roadmap.
Yeah. And it's kind of interesting how things are spoken about now as the fascia and the lymph and all these things.
Yes.
And we have an organ
We
for it.
we have a whole
A
process
whole
for and a
system.
whole system for looking at that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's again, I think it's really interesting though, and shapes a lot of, I think, the way we both practice and look at
Mhm.
things.
Mhm.
And it's what it's sorry, what I was to say is I think that it's really interesting too, because we are all connected as well to other people, but then even within our own system, you can't just work on one area without looking at the paired organ. And we
Mhm.
often see these patterns that are very much connected. And a lot of it just goes back to nature too, right? With
Absolutely.
the seasons, eating foods in season. But again, people get sick more in the current season, and especially if it might be your weaker organ system,
Right,
right?
true. Yeah, and I also see as well that like if the terrain and the body itself isn't optimized, then and that's why I called it the resiliency
Hmm.
method is because I started to see that, you could plateau in your health journey.
Right.
And when you got to that point, I started also, this is really around 2020, and a lot of healthcare practitioners I was hanging out with, I started to look around and I realized, you know, talk about a time when, fear is being like mongered at you.
Yeah.
But I also saw that we were kind of creating that inside the space of getting healthy. In
Hmm.
other words, what I mean
Yes.
is there's a lot of restriction, constriction, control,
Right.
you know, colleagues bringing extra suitcases into the hotel rooms just so they could sleep in another room and get a good night's sleep and having to do all these extra
Yeah.
things.
The opposite of resilience.
Yeah, and I thought, maybe we should be playing a different game.
Yeah.
Maybe we should be playing the game of let's get this as healthy so I don't have to worry about what our government's doing or what the next thing is that's coming
Hmm.
down the pike. Like, let's just put our attention here,
Hmm.
optimize that as much as we can to the extent that we can, share knowledge on how we're doing that. Let's create a community of bodies that it
Hmm.
doesn't matter what we're up against,
Right.
we're going to be the strongest and we're going to undo the last century of what's been done to
Hmm.
us and our bodies.
Right.
And we're going to get in the driver's seat.
Yes. And I think that's the thing too. There's so much fear about specific pathogens, toxins, food. And while a lot of it's completely valid because we
There
see
is.
this
Yeah.
all the
Hmm.
time with
Yep.
labs, right?
Yep.
Some people, it's just off the
It's storing a
charts.
ton of toxins in our bodies.
Yep.
Hmm.
And and then again, you still have someone like that, just a little bit of gluten will throw them very much off. So it's not that we're saying like I'm not a big 80/20 rule fan, but at the same time, we don't want to be fearful of everything.
Right.
And this is something I think we both see, but like with mold, for example, people are afraid to travel,
Hmm.
worried if they've gotten exposed, right? And then that heightens their nervous system so that there's so much perceived threat over all these things that we come in contact with.
Are you tired of treatments, protocols, and gurus who promise results but don't deliver? You're not alone. For years, I struggled with my own long term illness, and I know how frustrating it feels when nothing seems to work. That's why I developed the Resiliency Method. It's a science backed approach to combining the best of Western and ancient medicines to restore your body's natural intelligence. Patient after patient has discovered what's possible, living stronger, brighter, and more spiritually connected than ever before. Whether you're facing autoimmune issues, hormonal imbalances, weight struggles, or just feeling stuck, you don't need another quick fix. You need a clear path forward. Take the first step with a discovery call at drericaonline.com/discovery. That's DRERIKA online.com/discovery. Or dive deeper with a full initial consultation at drericaonline.com/initial-consultation, because your health, your clarity, and your freedom cannot wait.
And I know nervous system work and just focus is important. Do you wanna go into a little bit of
Yeah,
how you
sure.
do that?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, that's kind of, I always explain to patients, I'm like, if your body is the castle, the
Right.
nervous
Yes.
system is the knight standing at the castle door. So we got to make friends with the nervous system,
Yeah.
because that's how we get into the body in
Mhm.
more depth. And yeah, and the topic of mold and food sensitivities, I'm glad you brought those up too, because what we saw, and for many years I got to the point where I was anaphylactic gluten sensitive.
Wow.
I had accidentally served a bun at a restaurant, a gluten-free bun that was
Right,
glutinous,
not gluten free.
and
It
I
was
was, like,
glutinous.
choking up, and my friend, we went out to the park across the street. I happened to have a red laser
Oh,
on
wow.
me, so I was able to
Yeah,
treat it, so I didn't have to go to the hospital,
good.
but I was like, "Woo, I
Yeah,
really am not
not resilient.
I'm not very resilient,
Yeah.
reacting," and it really didn't occur too much to me at the time, but I just kinda figured that was just where my body was at. But as we had to, I mentioned the plateau that I was on myself,
Mhm.
I started to do a little bit more exploration for my own health, and then I started to see that there were things that all of us were encountering. Parasites, probably some of them you talked about,
Yeah.
ropeworm, that's definitely a big one, right? And we started doing more work in that area, and that helped a lot. But
Mhm.
then I was also seeing, and you'll appreciate this too, the endless merry-go-round of parasite
Oh,
detoxes
yeah.
and heavy metal cleanses. And herbs, I know herbs.
Yeah.
We study, as part of our training, we study the temperature of
Yeah,
herbs.
exactly. Yeah,
And
and food.
yeah, and food, and we study temperature, and we study patterns of excess and
Mhm.
deficiency. And one of the things I realized is, oh my gosh, I keep on taking these cold, harsh herbs
Mhm.
into this system, and it never ends,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
And so I started to inquire more on that perspective, and what I started to see was there was this material being left from
Mm.
behind by a lot
Right.
of those things.
Yes.
And if you cleared that out, then when we started to do that in our second phase of our program, we actually saw that people's food
Mm.
sensitivities were reversing,
Mhm.
including my
Yeah.
own.
Oh, you know what? When I do parasite cleansing
Mhm.
regularly, I can eat gluten again, which it's
Mhm.
all or dairy, sorry.
Dairy, yeah.
Not quite the gluten, it's the
Yeah, well,
dairy.
there is a
Yeah.
piece in our process that
Yeah.
takes it to the next level. So then, one, you get off the repeating endless cycle of parasite cleansing,
Mhm.
and then if you clear this material out and think of it from your perspective as phlegm,
Right.
there is
Oh, yeah.
a phlegm material. There's a specific way we can clear
Yeah.
that out. Clear out that phlegm,
Yeah.
that residual that's left behind where all the eggs are stored
Mhm.
and such. And if you do that work, then oftentimes that brings up the
Yeah.
nervous system and the immune system enough to where, not that you want to eat necessarily gluten all the time, but that you could,
If
and you wouldn't be
yeah.
taken out. And that's a
Right.
sign of better adaptability and better
Yes.
resiliency, right?
Yeah.
If you don't react to your environment as much,
Right.
right? And your food, you're not supposed to react to your food. That's the
Right.
bottom line, right?
Yeah,
We're really not.
and with that too, it's like a lot of the times what happens is almost like the cleaner we are, right?
Mhm.
And the more your lifestyle is, we find and patients find this that they're more reactive.
Mhm.
And so ideally though, we should be able to handle, someone with perfume walking by or
Right.
things like that, or an
Right.
accidental gluten at a
Right.
restaurant. Like your
Right.
body should be able to
Yes.
handle those things.
Yes.
And so it's a tricky place,
Mhm.
right? But
Absolutely. And then on the mold topic, we started to see too was if we did a little bit more cellular detox of mold
mhm,
at the cellular level
right.
from our ancestors that lived in moldy conditions,
Mhm.
we actually started to see people tolerate their environmental mold a
Ah,
little bit more
right.
effectively too, which
Yes.
is kind of cool to see that start to happen for people, because that's a real trigger for a
Mhm.
lot of people.
It
Mhm.
is for sure. And so do you have in your process, do you want to explain a little bit? Is it a 6-month program? Is it customized? How does
Yeah.
it work when
Yeah,
someone's coming to go
it's
through
3
it?
phases. The first phase is what I call, like, similar to maybe what a lot of other foundational nutritionists or practitioners might be doing. Some functional medicine doctors are getting into the parasite cleansing and the
Right.
heavy metal detox. Not all, but some, a,
Right.
a good portion of 'em at this point. So we do something similar in that respect. We'll identify if there's food sensitivities, take them out for a period of time.
Mhm.
We'll actually assess for if there's any interference from scar
Oh, yeah,
tissue.
and we as TCM practitioners, this is a
Mhm.
big thing,
Mhm. Should we
right?
talk about that? Because I don't think a
Yeah.
lot of people
Sure.
really, like, yeah,
Yep. That
right.
C-section, one of the biggest
Mhm.
ones, it cuts through most of the meridians,
Mhm.
right? On the front of the
Mhm.
body, it cuts through multiple. It's at
Yeah.
least 6, right? 7.
Yeah.
And it's it disrupts the chi flow in your body permanently since you've had the surgery.
Yep.
And so we have therapies.
Yep.
Do you do them in person, the
Yeah,
scar
we
therapy?
use, like, red light
Mhm.
scar therapy, and then we'll use a combination of, like, a pure source of vitamin E oil
Mhm.
or sesame oil if they're
Right.
gluten sensitive at that point. And then we've seen even the tears,
Uh-huh.
because the episiotomies are right
Oh,
along
right.
the
Yeah.
central meridians as well.
Yes.
And treating those sometimes are
Right.
helpful because that's the nervous system dysregulation. Because when you're talking about meridian
Yep.
chi not going through,
Oh, yeah.
she's saying the electrical
Yes.
energy is not flowing.
Right.
And I like to describe it as, like, if you have a river, right,
Right.
and you've got the river's running a certain way, and then
Mhm.
all of a sudden a beaver comes in and builds a
Builds a
dam.
dam. Yep.
Now the river is going to flow a little differently. The water's going to flow a little differently in the
Mhm.
in the river. But eventually that scar actually will start to send off. And so it goes from a lack of communication to then the scar will actually act like its own electrical
Mhm.
capacitor and actually start to send its own electrical signals off. And then you've got lack of communication
Yep.
to miscommunication. And that can really interfere with the nervous system.
And then a lot of toxins build up along
Yes.
scars too. So
Yeah. Just like they would in a
in a dam.
dam or a
Mhm.
river that was getting polluted.
Yep.
Hmm. Huge one. So yeah, so we assess for those things, Lyme, mold, fungus, bacteria, stealth, all the stealth pathogens and such. I do find when we handle the ropeworm, if we do it correctly, it will oftentimes take care of a lot of those
Mm.
co-infections. I see bacteria and fungus a little bit differently now. I see that they really are allowed to proliferate when there's even a deeper,
Mhm.
immune
Oh, for
stress going
sure.
on, and then
Yep.
as soon as we take that out,
Yep.
then they recover
Mhm.
finally, and then with the heavy metals, getting that down too helps obviously with recovering from candida and
Yeah.
and mold and fungal diseases and disorders. But then phases 2 and 3 are kind of like where we go, and I tell my patients at this stage, I'm like, "Okay, this is where you almost have to shut down Instagram because all the
Mhm.
advice that
Yeah.
you're hearing out there is
It's
like
not for
it's
you.
not gonna fly to you anymore. We're
Right.
in a new terrain,
Yeah.
and this is a where we're gonna take your body to another depth of healing." So phase 2 is really, I call it this insurance policy where we'll ensure that the parasite infections don't come back.
Mhm.
Second part of phase 2 is getting into that cellular mold
Right.
where
Yeah.
we're holding a lot of those toxins, but we've earned the right to do that. We
Right.
didn't get to
Yeah.
just start phase 2, we had to do phase 1.
Right.
It was really important because you can't go to that depth of healing, and that's the thing
Mm-mm.
people don't realize is
And that's when they get very sick and hurts and
yeah,
they've
yeah.
tried something too fast, too quick, too
Or all
strong,
the wrong order. Yeah.
and the wrong
In the
order.
wrong
Yeah.
order, at the wrong time, in the wrong amount. It's
Yep.
not customized, and that's where we specialize. It's like there are a certain part of the population that will respond beautifully to protocol approaches, and where our expertise is in the non-responders or the people
Mhm.
that are like, I don't really have time or don't wanna get started.
Right.
Like high performers are like, "I don't have time to
Yeah.
herx." That's where we can really come in and customize it enough
Mhm.
to where they can get that more organized and less variable approach. But phase 3 is where it's like, that's our area where, okay, now there's been all this damage,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
Or we're back to the castle,
Yes.
and we can't just get the keys to the castle and just go in and start putting up new wallpaper and paint
Right.
colors. Like, we know we have to rent a dumpster and fill it up
Right.
for a while, right? But then in phase 3 is where we are picking out the paint colors and things, and everything's tidied up. But there has been some level of deficiency that's been
Yes. Yep.
created
Yep.
by all the excess
Yep.
of all these things that we cleaned up.
Mhm.
It's time to build and rebuild. So we'll use a lot of PMGs, protomorphogens at that point, whole foods. They're accepting whole food nutrition supplements way better than they did in earlier phases. We'll use herbs, homeopathy in the earlier phases
Right.
typically, because that's sometimes what only a body can
Right.
do is homeopathy,
Yep.
at
For
today's
sure.
age. But at the third phase, they're really accepting a lot of the whole food nutrition, which is how we were designed, right? We were
Right.
supposed to eat
Yeah.
to heal. And they're not as sensitive to their diet, or they're not sensitive at all at that
Mhm.
point. And we start to rebuild those organs, tissues, and glands
Mhm.
that were really beat up.
Yep.
And we find that more natural, innate ability to be resilient and adaptable. And then that's where we're seeing, like, this is a longevity
Right.
program for.
Yeah.
So we'll give the body a really great source of liquid bioavailable collagen that we'll use as its source for increasing stem cell supply.
Mhm.
We'll also use a lot of times mitochondrial, great mitochondrial support to
Mhm.
help, because we're such a depth of the body and with a lot of
Yes.
these areas at this point that we need to boost the
Yes.
mitochondria function for a bit. And then we just keep reiteratively, like, cycling through that. And then this is the crazy part. You ready?
Okay.
This all culminates into where we're getting into some of that deeper level of brain and nervous system
Yes.
detoxification. And so phase 3 actually does have a part of it that's detoxification. But it's where the encapsulations of toxins have been held deep
Mm.
inside the body,
Right.
and that's where a lot of us are missing that, because I didn't understand why. Wait a minute, I've done all this cleansing and
Right.
such. Why am I still showing of high levels markers on, heavy metal tests
Right.
and things? And I started to see it was because there's actually encapsulations of these toxins deep down inside the
Mhm.
body. And most of these toxins we were exposed to, at
Yeah.
very early, either in
Decades.
utero
Yeah.
or, for a lifetime. And the body's smart. It
Yep.
sees a toxin like that and it goes, I'm putting that to
Yeah.
bed.
Away.
Yeah. And that most of that's done in the nervous system, in the brain, and the
Mm.
adipose of the body,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
So this is what has unlocked a lot of weight issues,
Mhm.
especially for females that are middle aged.
Yeah.
They get to that point, perimenopause. Like, the body's actually doing that because there's a certain level of
Yeah,
toxicity
it's
in your
trying to
body
help
by
you.
40
Yeah. Yes.
or 50,
Yeah.
that your
Yep.
body is like, yeah, if I don't put it in the fat cells,
Right.
then eventually, and I've seen this too, where, you know how we go through that phase during perimenopause, but then ultimately, if we don't take those toxins out there, it can go
Yeah.
right into their bones and their skin.
Yeah.
So that's one of the reasons we see the osteoporosis and
Mhm.
the skin cancer rates as they're aging
Mhm.
so intensely.
Yeah.
It's not the sun, it's the toxins inside your
Right.
body,
Yes.
you know,
Reacting.
that is creating a damp heat toxin
Yeah.
environment, right?
Yeah.
So phase 3, you'll appreciate this actually, is blood stasis and damp heat toxin,
Yep.
because the blood stasis patterns,
Mhm.
that's the senescence, the immunosenescence
Mhm.
patterns that we're dealing with, the zombie cells that have
Right.
accumulated over time from so
Yeah.
much of
Life and
life, toxins,
exposure, trauma.
exposure, yeah, trauma, yeah, all the things. So yeah, we start to move those out. Body starts to heal even more depth and more foundationally, and then that earns us the right. The body will eventually go, oh, it's safe enough around here now. I'll start to open up some of these encapsulations where I've held these real deep,
Mhm.
and they'll start to eliminate that from their brain. And the biggest one is the aluminum we're
Right.
finding there. And what do we know about Alzheimer's
Yeah.
and the
Big
plaques
connection.
that are accumulating in the
Mhm.
body? And that's phlegm. That
Yeah.
is the
It is.
body's intelligence go at play, saying there is toxicity here and I want to put a blanket over it.
Right.
And then that happens year after year. You got more and more accumulation. You got plaque. You've got, encapsulation, lipomas. You got
Mhm.
these
Yep.
little pockets
Yep.
everywhere.
Fibroids. Yep.
Fibroids, yeah, cysts,
Cysts,
tumors,
tumors.
nodules.
Yep.
And then what happens when you have those encapsulations over time? Well, you have a lack of fresh blood with all the nutrients and the healing properties that is not available to those areas of the body. And now you're talking about more serious diagnoses and such,
Yep.
right? So
Well, it sounds like your program really hits a lot of
it
layers.
does.
Yes.
It's a very in-depth process. Usually about takes some time.
Yeah. Of
You
course.
don't do that overnight.
No.
Yeah.
Or in a 3-month.
In a 3 month,
No.
we don't do it in 3 months, sadly. If we did, I'd probably be retired on
Yeah.
an island. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. It's always
Yeah.
fun, especially to, again, chat with somebody who loves toxins, TCM, homeopathy,
Yes.
and functional medicine.
Yes.
So,
Thank you for sharing this time with me.
yes,
Yeah.
of course. It's a pleasure.
Likewise. Thanks for tuning into the Resiliency Method, the Truth About Healing podcast. If this episode spoke to you, follow, share, and leave us a review. Are you ready to go deeper? Book your discovery call now at drericaonline.com/discovery and take your first step today.